think horror fiction in prose will never die. No, I think that much as I love the cinema of horror, and I love the cinema generally, and I wouldn't substitute it for prose. I think there are things you can do in on the printed page, or indeed, in reading aloud if you like, that you can't do on the screen. They're two quite separate art forms, just as the theatre or opera or indeed pure music. Well, they're all painting. Every art is a different art. Every art has its own power and its own particular language. And much so, I think. For instance, there are great horror movies which suggest far more than they show. The original Cat People, for example.
Mm.
But you can't. The prose does that in a sort of a different way, I think. And you can't quite get on the screen what M.R. James does when, I don't know, when he has somebody reaching for as he thinks, a leather bag of treasure in a niche in a wall, and the bag of treasure slips out and hangs on the lip of the niche for a moment, and then falls forward onto his chest and puts its arms round his neck. I think that's something you can only do in prose. You could do it on film, but it wouldn't quite be the same thing. Now, on the other hand, there are things you can do on film that you can't do in prose. And I think basically we're the richer for both. You get a film like, say, the Blair Witch Project. Now, for me, I mean that there are great Lovecraftian films. There are great films that are based on Lovecraft. And two of which, as I would say, are the well, amateur only in the best sense of amateur. The two films made by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. They did a silent version of The Call of Cthulhu and as it were, an early sound version of The Whisperer in Darkness. And they're splendid pastiches of film form as it was then, but it's more than that too. But I mean, a film like Alien is certainly rooted in Lovecraft, as H.R. Giger would have been the first, I think, to acknowledge. And indeed, Dan O'Bannon, who was one of the screenwriters, certainly had his roots, or some of his roots were in Lovecraft, which again he felt he was trying to convey in the film. But I think in some ways, for me, the most Lovecraftian of films, or perhaps the film that most completely achieves what Lovecraft himself felt were his ambitions for the field, is the Blair Witch Project, which shows virtually nothing at all, which espouses Lovecraft's documentary approach, and just as Lovecraft has, a story called The Facts in the Case of Arthur Jermyn, so the Blair Witch Project is, it's starting with that title, the sense of a documentary. And the fact the film shows, the worst thing that film actually shows is a tooth, isn't it? A bloody
Yeah.
tooth. And that's all you see. And
Yes.
everything else is illusion and suggestion and a sense of, something dreadful, lurking just off camera or just out there in the dark. Um, there's a wonderful moment very early on indeed, which I assume is just one of those happy coincidences, where one of the interviewees that the documentarists ask about the Blair Witch legend is a young lady with a toddler she's holding. And as soon as somebody mentions the Blair Witch Project, the child turns and kind of snuggles against his mother and hides its face. And that's a most extraordinary moment. And I think, in fact, it bears out one of my beliefs about writing and making fiction, is that when you're writing something, or making a film, whatever it is, the happy accident will come along.
Yes.
It was going to be there, and it's just exactly what you need at that moment. So who knows where that's coming from? Perhaps we're all part of a larger pattern, and we're simply transcribing the cosmos.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ghoulish Ghost Train, our informal panel about horror movies, popular culture. My name is Don Doria. I'm the executive editor here at Flame Tree Press, and we are joined with a number of excellent authors from Flame Tree. The first thing I'd like to do is ask them one by one to introduce themselves and tell us just a little bit about themselves and their books, in no particular order, starting with, say, John Everson.
I had a feeling you were going to go next window over. I am John Everson. I have been writing horror since the 90s. I think that, I'm kind of rooted in the Night Gallery Twilight Zone tradition of horror. That's when I sort of started writing short fiction on, and kind of graduated into more of the occult, demonic, erotic horror element as the novels went on. Just released my 12th novel, in fact, Voodoo Heart from Flame Tree, this past week.
All right. Again, pretty much at random, Hunter Shea.
I like to be random. Hello, I'm Hunter Shea. I've been writing professionally probably like a little over a decade, all with Don. If it's not for Don, I'm not going to write. Over the years, I've kind of gotten known as the cryptid monster guy, which is pretty awesome. But I also like ghosts. I love satanic stuff. I like legends. So my latest book is Misfits, which is, I tell everybody, it's a book about misfits, written for misfits by a misfit. And that just came out in September.
All right. And next, J.G. Faherty.
All right. Hi. I've been writing for about 10 years, 11 years myself. I grew up with a cemetery as a playground, and a lot of people feel that explains a lot about what I decided to go into for horror writing. I tend toward traditional horror, a lot of ghosts, supernatural types of things, and been working with Don for several years now. And my latest one is called Sins of the Father, which is a sort of a Lovecraftian tale. And that's an area that I've been getting into a lot lately.
All right. And last but by no means least, Tim Waggoner.
Hi, I'm Tim Waggoner. I'm not sure how to describe what I write. I guess weird, dark fantasy, surreal, nightmare horror, I suppose. Been writing for about 30 years. Been a creative writing teacher for most of that time. Published about 50 novels, half of them original, about half of them media tie-ins.
All right. So that's everybody. So my vision for this panel is pretty informal, as if the five of us were like meeting in a bar and talking about horror movies. So with that, the first question that I think would normally come up would be, so have you seen any good movies lately? And let's start with, this time, Hunter.
Oh, I have to tell you, I reserve October. I renamed it Horrortober in my life about 12 years ago. And I have a personal challenge where I endeavor to watch at least one horror movie a day for the month of October. So I have to say, my old record was 55. I'm up to 66, and we're not even done yet. So I'm feeling pretty good this year. Watched a ton. I have to say, I'm not a big anthology fan, but I just watched the Mortuary Collection on Shudder, and it was one of those where I had to watch it for a podcast, and it was like, put a gun to my head. You're making me watch this. I hate you guys. I really enjoyed this. It had a kind of whimsical trick-or-treat vibe to it. It was very tongue-in-cheek at times. It was gross at times. Clancy Brown is amazing in this movie. So that was a real pleasant surprise. That just blew me away. I know Tim must have seen it. Did you see it, Tim?
Yeah, of course I did. It was great. I think it'd make a good double feature with Scare Me, which is on Shudder too, since both of them are about storytelling.
It's funny you say that, because I said this is like the movie, because we saw Scare Me 2 weeks ago. I said, well, you should rename that Wake Me, it's over. I pulled out. I never stopped watching a movie. And 45 minutes in, I said I'm out. But it was similar because it's storytelling. But whereas Scare Me is just telling the story, and sometimes they're acting it out together in the cabin. This was, we flash over to a total recreation of the story, which I thought I loved it.
Yeah, I think Scare Me would have worked better on the stage than it does in the movie.
I said that too. It would have been a good off Broadway play.
Mm-hmm. Do I keep going? Do I tell you one I found it? I'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
One I saw that I liked the premise of was a movie called Furies. And it takes the slasher premise and turns it into kind of like the Hunger Games, sort of. Women and men are kidnapped. The women are put into this kind of corral that they can't get out of, miles and miles and miles wide. And they are the victims, and they each are assigned one of these men who've been surgically altered to be like mass horrible serial killers. And they have one woman they have to protect. They're supposed to try to kill all the other women. And if their woman they're supposed to protect gets killed, their heads blow up. And so it's just been somebody's watching this whole thing for entertainment. It's like
Belko experiment, I thought.
Yeah, or like Hostel a little bit that way. But it was really interesting to watch the difference, like the power dynamics, because the women have to be protected by these serial killers at all costs, or else they're going to die. And it upends the tropes in a lot of interesting ways. It's a lot of fun.
So nobody basically should feel like they have to wait for me to call on them or anything. Anybody can break in at any time. This is just a round table discussion.
I'm waiting for John to tell me what's new in Italian cinema. Or did you go back to Argento in the good old days?
Yeah, I've been so I followed your lead. However, I was not nearly as brave as you. For October, I decided I was going to do the 10 nights leading up to Halloween. I'd watch a giallo. And I've been trying to, and then I'm doing like little capsule, reviews the next day. I own them all, so I've seen them all before. What's great is I have like zero memory for anything. The only thing that I remember about a movie or book 4 weeks after I watched it is that it was good or it sucked. So, I'm really bad about deep discussions about fiction and arts because I really don't remember any of the finer points typically, unless I've seen or read something like 5 times. However, it's been great because I've gone back, I've been pulling stuff off the shelf and I remember this was kind of good, wasn't it? Yes. And then the plot twists are completely brand new to me. It's awesome. It's like I never saw it before. I watched last night. This is the 3rd time I've seen this movie. I watched The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave last night, which is great. It's a perfect movie for Halloween time because it starts out more as kind of a Halloween-y, weird, erotic thriller kind of thing. And you're like, this isn't a giallo at all. This is just like a weird horror movie with this guy killing women with red hair. And then it turns completely around and it actually does become a giallo halfway through because all of a sudden there's somebody killing people and you don't know who, and then you've got to try and follow the clues. And the ending is great because I was trying to count it last night. It's like, okay, was that no, it wasn't a double cross, quadruple cross? How many plot twists were there in that last 15 minutes? It's pretty awesome. So yeah, I've been pretty much all 1970s giallo for the last 2 weeks, and in fact, it wasn't intentional. I pulled I think 4 of them that I've watched were from '71. Like I'd look them up the next day and go, another 1971, geez. But I've been trying not to just do the standards, so I've been trying to pick things that I haven't watched very much in the last 5 years.
Do you ever go up into like the 80s Italian horror scene? Because it's something that I've always kind of held at arm's length because it's like, oh, it looks cool, but the stories always elude me. But when COVID hit, I was like Burgess Meredith in the Twilight Zone. I finally had time. I thought this was the greatest thing ever. I said, I'm going up into my attic and I'm just going to watch movies till my eyes fall out. So
I haven't left since. You're still up there.
I haven't. I still have all my empties up here too. But
everyone needs the collection.
I saw a Phenomenon. You ever see Phenomenon?
Mm-hmm.
Phenomena.
That
that movie. I said,
That movie right there.
I
Kind of one of my all-time favorites.
I wanted to kick myself for not watching this all day. I said, this is incredible. This is a girl that talks to bugs, a killer chimpanzee, the greatest ending of probably of any movie of all time.
Yep. Nope. That is a personal favorite. I think I own about 5 different editions of that film, and it's on the wall, obviously. So
Editions in Argento owns, you know. It's
Yeah, that's a crazy
I
movie.
just watched opera for the first time in a couple of years. And,
Yeah.
you know, like you were saying, I'd forgotten some of these plot twists.
those birds.
Yeah, well, that's the part I remembered. That's it's hard to forget the birds.
I actually just rewatched that over the summer. I had forgotten the birds, Don. I did not remember how much of a part they played in that film because I didn't remember much about it.
Okay, well, there you go.
Just the eye thing. That's about all I really remember.
Yeah, the famous image with the needles or the pins.
Stitching their eyes.
See, you say the eye thing. You've described every Italian horror movie.
Yeah, but every Italian horror movie doesn't have pins inserted right at the eye. So if you shut it,
I cannot watch eye stuff. Like that's the only thing I bail out on. Like my wife, one time she had surgery and it was so bad they left her abdomen open and I had to look inside this and help her and clean her. And I could do that. But if she pulls her eye down, says there's something in my eye, I go, I don't know. Ask a stranger. I can't look inside your eye like that. And maybe this is a thing from my father showing me these movies when I was young. This could be. I might have just had a breakthrough.
Greg, what about you? What have you been watching? Greg?
Oh, well, you know, it's funny because I'm probably the outlier on this whole thing.
You hate movies.
I'm not a big fan of a lot of the modern horror. I find you know, like torture porn and serial killers and things like that just don't hold my interest. And that's like what a majority of films are today. So around this time of year, I tend to go back and watch some of my old favorites like Evil Dead or White Noise, which, you know, I like the suspense. I like the thrills more than I like the blood and the guts. This year, I have seen 2 really good movies that I would recommend. One is The Color Out of Space, where Nicolas Cage's hyper antics actually play well into the movie.
Yeah, he leans into it.
For that role. And then the other night, we watched something called Good Boy on Hulu. And it's about a woman who adopts a dog, this little tiny dog, this big, 10 pounds, as her emotional support animal. And it turns out to be a werewolf. So it kills
really cute, adorable werewolf.
Yes, but she doesn't realize it until it's like killed 2 or 3 people already. But it's only killing the people that make her upset. So she falls in love with the dog. She wants to keep it. And every time it kills something, she has to then hide the body and bury it. It's a very dark comedy. It actually came from Blumhouse, which was surprising because it's not scary. It's more of like I said, a dark comedy, but it's worth the watch if you have Hulu.
Luckily, I do here. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, it's like if you liked Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, you know, that kind of humor, you'll like this movie.
Nice.
So
I don't know about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I was just going to ask, have you guys generally been watching more recent things or going back to old classics or a little bit of both? It seems like, especially in October, but maybe because of COVID, you've had more time. But it seems like you've all been watching a lot of movies and not writing books, but that's beside the point. Remember,
I'll have you know, I finished my book for you early, but I delivered it just on time because I didn't want you to think that, you know, I could write them that
fast.
fast.
And I'm working on edits.
Okay. But anyway, have you guys been watching, or in general, not even just in October, do you generally tend to watch more of the old classics, like the Universals or like old silent films? or do you try to keep up with the latest releases and things like that? No, see what's coming out now.
Actually, in October, I tend to tape record a lot of stuff that's on, because a lot of these channels show movies late at night, and I'm just not a late night person. So I record a lot of stuff. And then in November, I watch horror all through the month, because that's when you get to see all the stuff that's not shown during the year, like the Universal classics, like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, things like that.
I mean, I've been watching everything. I normally watch new and old. The good thing is I have a couple of podcasts, so we always have to watch new things for the podcast. So maybe movies that I wouldn't even bother with. If we hear that there's some buzz, I'm going to watch them. So I think that's cool. But now, like, I play around a little bit in early October. I'll try something I never heard before. But once you get to mid-October, it's serious time now. So we went. Now, Don, you and I were probably 10 years old when Frankenstein first came out. So
yeah, I was around 8 or 9. But yeah,
yeah, we'd go to the Nickelodeon.
The Edison version.
The Edison version. So I found out my wife had never. She saw Frankenstein and she cries every time. But I said, well, let's watch Bride, because Bride is bonkers. But she never saw Son of Frankenstein. She never saw Ghost of Frankenstein. So we've been just ripping through those every day, and it's been fun. Oh, look at that collection,
yeah.
John.
Yeah,
Gotta have the Universal Monsters collection. That way you don't wait for late night TV.
Well, see, the good thing with the on-demand is I don't even have to get out of bed to go find that. Just pick up my remote, go here on Amazon. Got it. $2.99.
That's awesome. I've been doing more new stuff. I think I tend to look for stuff that might spark my imagination, or show me images that I haven't seen. I want to see what people are doing with horror. But this month, I've also been like filling in the cracks in my filmography as a film watcher, stuff that I just missed, like that I would read about, way back when, I guess back in the days of the Nickelodeon. And I'd be reading Famous Monsters magazine, and I'd read about a movie, but you'd never see it because there was no cable, there was no, VCRs. And so if I'll see it on like Prime, I'll be like, okay, I got to check this thing out. And so the last one I watched like that was Who Slew Auntie Roo, which is like a 70s movie that I'd never seen, but I'd heard about it since I was a kid. And I finally got to watch it, and I was like, awesome. So, so that's what I've been doing. It's like looking at new stuff, but, filling in some of the gaps.
So with sort of tying into what Tim was saying, with all these various movies, since you are writers, are there any particular movies or genres or directors that have worked their way in a way, their style into your books? Anything that's influenced how you've been writing?
Not on my end. When I write, like when I come up with ideas, a lot of times I tend to see a movie in my head and then try and put that on paper. But there's never a certain director or producer that I think about. When I did Hellrider for Flame Tree last year, that for me was kind of a grindhouse thing. And I like that style of movie, but I wouldn't say like, oh, this was, influenced by Rodriguez or this was influenced by Tarantino. After it's written, I might say, oh, if you like those directors, you might like this book. But I don't think movies influence me. I think I'm influenced more by television than I am by movies.
It's funny. You asked that question, and Kimberly Urena, who was in the chat, mentioned children shouldn't play with dead things. And when I did my book Island of the Forbidden with you, Don, when we were at Samhain together, I named the island Ormsby Island after Alan Ormsby. I have a tendency to do things like that where I'll take particular movies or directors and I'll just sprinkle them into the book, and I'll just wonder if anyone will catch on. I had on that island were twins Alice and Jason. Like Friday the 13th, anybody? Raise a hand if you know. I did a book, They Rise, where every character and every ship in the book was a derivative of somebody or something, a creature from the Black Lagoon. So I kind of like to do things like that. I don't know if a particular director's affected my writing style, but I do try to honor them. Or maybe I dishonor them. I don't know what I do with my writing, but I try to honor them in my books.
Well, I'm going to say Flash was influenced by, say, maybe slashers.
Could have been. My whole hope was I was going to get a lot of GNR fans who were thinking they were getting the biography of Slash and just go, what? But yeah, I mean, that's a homage to everything in the 80s. And I wanted to make a bad guy that I was pretty sure could kick the living daylights out of Jason, Michael Myers, and all of them combined. So that was kind of my goal.
I did a similar thing in House by the Cemetery. I mean, two of the characters who play into that book are Argento and Lucio. So, there might be an allusion there to something.
Not to mention the title.
Yeah, well, obviously. And the whole point is that, it's a house by a cemetery. It had absolutely nothing to do with Fulci's movie. And it's not a homage to the movie, but it's a haunted house theme. So throughout the haunted house, I could call on all these different films and did. And the hope being that, people who really love old style, 70s, 80s horror movies are going to pick up on all the little allusions and laugh and then, move on. And if you don't know them, it didn't matter because it's not integral that that background. So that was a lot of fun. And I'm doing that with names in the current book. The current book is kind of my Giallo movie homage. And there are certainly some names in there, Martino, who might have something to do with, Giallo films. And it's a lot of fun to do that. But like you say, I don't know that the movies per se have taught me how do you write this scene. That said, I think everything you consume influences what your style is and what you write to a certain extent. So there's some background in the head that's saying, oh, well, to set this scene right, you should do this and this and this. And, you probably saw or read or, something in the background influenced that. So, but could I actually say, oh, well, yes, I write like Argento? It's like, no. And actually, I hope I don't, because Argento is a terrible plottist.
I was going to say, yeah, let's hope not.
But his wife was good, though. Daria Nicolodi, she can write.
Yep.
So, Tim, I can't think of any movie that is similar to your style.
Well, I think of my imagination like, you've seen this in I don't know how many horror films. There's some kind of factory that has a giant grinding machine in it, and it's never got any railings around it to keep anybody from falling in. My imagination is like that. And every damn thing that I see just goes in there. And so, I can kind of pick out in a book of mine, I'll be like, oh, this is kind of an 80s horror thing. This is a 70s horror thing. This is something I pulled maybe from a book I read. So, it's all this is just gigantic mush that I draw on. So, yeah, I would say that film does. It really does. And sometimes, too, like if I'm watching like a really surreal or nightmarish film, it gives me some ideas of how just images that I might be able to play off on, or it sparks ideas that are unrelated to what I saw, but I had to see it for that idea to be sparked. So,
for any of you, are there any particular movies that you just watch over and over again? Like, I don't know if you watch them every year, or, what movies have you seen more than any other that you just never get tired of seeing?
Oh, The Thing, Phantasm. For sure.
The original?
Phantasm. Oh, we're going to have to fight on that one.
The original. It's a great one.
Phantasm's awesome. It's awesome.
I love Phantasm.
Yep.
All right. I'm being outnumbered here.
Doesn't make a lick of sense, but it's fun.
I went to the theater to see the 4K restoration.
Ooh.
Oh, did you? How was it?
It actually looked awesome. I mean, it's really worth seeing it, cleaned up.
I saw
actually
it on TV.
It's the only movie in my entire life that gave me a jump scare.
Which one was it?
Yeah, which?
When he came through the mirror.
Okay.
Oh. All right. Now I have to ask, since the three of you are Phantasm fans, did any of you read Don Coscarelli's book?
No.
True Indie?
No.
I'm not the Phantasm fan, and I own the book, and I read it. This is all weird.
It's in my Kindle. I just haven't
really-
gotten to it yet.
It's a really good book.
Every book on earth is in my Kindle. I don't know when I'll get to them all, but
It was
no, I
funny.
find myself rewatching. Like when I wrote some notes for the panel, I realized I have horror periods. So there's it's almost like when you talk about periods of art. So it's or music. So I've got the Universal period, then I've got Hammer, then I've got 70s and 80s horror, and all the American International Poe pictures. And so I would say probably those periods I keep revisiting. So anything that would be in those periods I've seen, whatever would be the classics of those periods. I've seen a ton.
I saw a bunch of API stuff this summer. So I was skewing away from horror actually, just looking at action adventure stuff.
I mean, there are certain movies we have to watch every year. Around this time of year, it's always The Haunting, which it's not Halloween without The Haunting, and Halloween. But then there's also The Funhouse. For some reason, we love The Funhouse in this house. Creature from the Black Lagoon is a must-see every year. Motel Hell, Meat's Meat and Man's Gotta Eat. We always watch Motel Hell. There's probably about and the list starts growing because there are good movies that come out every year, and I go, oh, that's now in the rotation, like Ready or Not, that movie that came out last year. That's in the rotation. The Final Girls, It Follows. Every year there's another movie. So pretty soon my Octobers are going to need to be 60 days long just so I could get to the things that have to be in the rotation. But I love the fact that there's so much good stuff out there that's worthy of visiting all the time and only gets better when you watch it again.
It Follows is actually a modern movie I saw.
There you go.
All right.
And you know what? I loved it until the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That, for me, It Follows, and many modern movies have the same problem for me. They are great movies until the last 5 minutes or so, and then they just totally screw up the ending.
Oh.
And it just
How
ruins
so?
the whole movie for me, and I can't watch it again.
How so?
Well, a good example would be the Babadook.
Babadook's brilliant. It's got the greatest ending of all time.
See, I don't. I
He's gonna come
disagree.
with those.
I
Greatest
disagree. It was
ending of
such
And
a-
the most annoying kid ever.
And The Conjuring, the same thing. A letdown the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
And when that happens to me with a movie, I will never watch it again.
Did you
Because
not like
I know-
the nebulous ending
know
of It
it's gonna
Follows?
Just drop It Follows.
Yeah. Did you not like that ending where you, well, is it following or is it not? Is that the part
No.
where you jumped off?
I think that sometimes it's too ambiguous. And
Right.
that, I don't mind when they say, oh, well, was it this or was it that? But then when they just say, you know what? We don't know what the heck we're doing with this ending. We're just going to leave it up to the audience. That's when it screws me up. And too many movies. I think probably in the last 5 or 10 years, I can name 3 movies that actually stuck the ending really well.
Do it. Name them.
Yeah.
Insidious, Paranormal Activity, and Hereditary.
Hereditary is the feel-good movie of the year it came out.
Oh yeah.
That's right. A lot of people didn't like that ending, but I thought it was really cool. I remember in the theater, it was absolutely silent when that
You
was
might
going on. It
not
was
like
great.
the ending, but it works.
I
And
had
I'm
people
fine with
up in
that.
arms on that ending in the theater. They were cursing at that ending, and I was loving it.
I've got it on the shelf, and I just haven't watched it because I keep hearing how upbeat it is.
Yeah, probably. Toni Collette should have got an Oscar for her performance.
She was.
I mean, the thing about that,
Absolutely.
her seering portrayal of grief is what is the best thing about that movie.
she was
Right,
Not
and
Not
you
that
watch
that'll
it
ever
and
happen for a horror movie, but
it should. A horror movie can win
should.
Best Picture. She should have gotten at least nominated.
Yeah.
Because you think she's not just that level of grief that you rarely see in a movie for those hour and a half. She's doing it week after week while they're filming. I don't know how she did that.
yeah.
She must have been a mess when that was finished filming.
But
So-
then you have, on the other end of the scale, what the heck was the name of that movie with the where they had to be silent all the time?
Oh yeah,
The Quiet Place.
Quiet Place, yeah.
The first half of the movie, great. And then all of a sudden, it's like either they brought different writers in or they decided, we're not going to pay attention to actual science here with this. So on the one hand, they can hear you from 7 miles away. But if they're in the same room with you and you've got a rag in your mouth, they can't hear you at all. It doesn't make sense.
I'm starting a podcast with you so we could go head to head on these things.
That'd be
This is
awesome.
going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I would listen.
We could argue for hours.
So I'm not going to say what I felt about the ending, just tying it in here, but what did, I assume most of you have seen The Haunting of Fly Manor?
Nope, not yet.
I haven't.
I gave up halfway through. I couldn't finish it.
Ah,
I'm not shocked now. Yeah, I'm going to start that in November. Wasn't enough time in Burgess Meredith's world this time.
yeah. You still got your glasses, though, so.
They haven't broken yet.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I wouldn't say anything else about Fly Manor, so.
I loved The Haunting of Hill House
Yeah,
when they
I
did
did
that
too.
remake last year.
Yeah.
And going into Bly Manor, I knew it wasn't going to be the same thing.
Mm.
But for me, it was just talking. There was
Wait,
nothing
Fly
but talk.
Manor? Yeah.
So you would call it the Haunting of Blah Manor?
I would call it a gothic romance. And if you enjoy that, you will love the series.
Okay.
There was nothing horror about it.
So
I've heard so and so on that.
Yeah, I'll give away my feeling was I really liked it until the last 2 or 3 episodes. But
I've heard people say that.
yeah, maybe it's
Oh,
just
well.
the editor in me. I would have asked for a revision.
I'm still going to watch it.
Yeah,
It's
me
definitely
too.
worth watching, especially if you liked Haunting of Hill House.
Mhm.
But so talking about film versions and things, can any of you think of any film or TV versions that are better than the books they were based on?
Ooh.
I
Well,
got an easy one.
probably The Thing. You know,
Oh.
I've read the novella that it was based on. So
Who goes there?
yeah. So I would say The Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Who Goes There is terrible. It's almost unreadable. You can't believe that 2 great movies came out of that.
Right.
Well,
Psycho.
1938 or something? How old is that?
It's the writing's just terrible. Like if that came to Don, and that would stay on the slush pile forever. You could never get off the pile.
Well, the point being, I think slush piles for pulp magazines were a lot different in the 30s and 40s.
Ooh.
Whatever that be.
I think Stephen King, just sit. I'm going to mention it. I think The Shining the movie is better than the book.
I was about to say that I might be the only person that thinks that. I think it's a tie, but I love the original Shining, the movie, not the
Not the
miniseries.
miniseries. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, I think the movie Psycho is better than the block.
That's true.
Yeah.
I agree.
The original Hitchcock one, not
Right.
not the-
Right.
Are there any remakes that you think are better than the original versions
Yes,
of movies?
I can name one right off the top of my head, and that was Rob Zombie's Halloween. The
Okay.
first one, not the second one.
Again,
The second
I'm
one
making
was
a podcast just for me and you. This is going to be great.
Okay.
Nope.
I have no comment.
So you like a white trash Michael Myers. But you know
I
what?
do.
I always
I
did say
like
if he called it anything but Halloween, that movie would get a little more love than it does.
Yeah, I mean,
just like
I
the way
like
they went into the mental aspects of the childhood better.
it.
Yeah,
It just
which
that part
is what ruins it.
like filler though. It's like, okay, now we're just gonna make up a backstory to fill some time, and then I don't know. To me, that movie, because I love zombie stuff. I own all of his films. I enjoy them, but that one in particular, because it does not actually work in the same way as the original, I hated it because it's just a jump scare movie over and over and over and over again. and it
That's what the original is.
no, the original is a long, suspenseful build-up.
Yeah, there's not a lot of jump scares in that movie. It's
Halloween has
But back
building
then,
terror.
but back then, that was what a jump scare movie was. You can't compare jump scares then to now. David Morrell the other day posted something about Rambo, saying that before the Rambo movie was made, your typical action film had 3 7 or 8 minute pieces of actual action in them, and the rest was build up to the action. And that after Rambo was like 39 or 48 minutes, I forget what the number was, of action in an hour and a half movie. And he said that changed the whole way that action movies were made. And horror went through that same thing. The original Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Halloween, the original, any of those that you want to think about from the 70s. When you go into the 80s, jump scares were completely different. They took up most of the film. So you can't compare Zombie to the original in that respect.
The dialogue irritated the heck out of me. And I'm a guy who loves the F word. And it was overused for me. I was like, just
But that's a Rob Zombie film.
some life boy in your mouth. I know.
yeah.
Well, I didn't dislike Zombies film at all, but I enjoyed it because as I watched it like in mental conversation with the first movie. So I was really interested to see what he was going to do different.
Yeah.
But I like his sequel that he made a lot better because he just does all kinds of strange stuff with that one.
Yeah, he did.
His sequel to his Halloween.
The sequel he didn't want to do.
Yeah.
They made him do.
And then sadly, after that, all of his films have gone downhill. They're just derivative.
I like The Lords of Salem.
I was just going to say The Lords of Salem. I have watched that completely smashed on tequila, completely sober. I read the book that somebody gave me at a horror convention to convince me the story is good. And I don't, there's a disconnect for me. Yeah. But I also kind of like the weird vibe and I appreciate that part of it. And Sherry Moon is not nearly as irritating as she can be in a movie. So I think what he needs to do for his next movie is
the only guy who likes Sherry Moon.
I mean,
wait, like her or like looking at her?
I like her. I find her entertaining on screen. I really do.
You and Rob. If he wants to up his creds, the next movie he directs, somebody else has to write it, and he cannot hire his wife.
Much like M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah. Well, M. Night's had a nice little resurgence until Glass came out, but we'll let that one slide.
Again, good movies, bad endings.
Yep. So my remake better than the original is Blasphemy, Dawn of the Dead.
No, I can see that.
Dawn of the Dead, sure.
Yeah. To change a zombie.
Dawn of the Dead, the original, people lust after that movie. To me, when I see pies being thrown in zombies' face, I kind of lose the whole thread. I mean,
you wouldn't do that?
No.
But what about the Night of the Living Dead remake? Which was better, that or the original?
Yeah, the story was interesting. The things they did differently, I really enjoyed.
But was it better than the original?
No.
Better as a film in terms of like story and acting and directing and everything, probably. Better in terms of its visceral impact, no, not at all. So I guess it depends on what you mean by better.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I think the impact of it and the emotional involvement, the way it hits you, I think the original is better.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you go 30 years, 40 years into the future, technique is going to be better, special effects are going to be better, and they have a chance to fix the issues with the originals. But sometimes the writing, there's something about a basic movie. It's like if you listen to the first Black Sabbath album and then you listen to one 7 albums later when it's all studio clean and everything else, that rough, we spent 3 days in the studio and we just hammered it out, hits you a lot harder.
It also depends where you are in your life when you first see something. Like, I think The Hills Have Eyes remake is a better movie, probably in every respect, but I prefer the original.
Yeah.
But I will admit that the remake is much better.
Well, I think that in the 70s, there is that kind of grittier sort of, it's like a nightmare. That they don't have name actors, or the people became name actors later, but then they aren't. So, anybody could die. If Harrison Ford's in a movie, he's probably not going to die right away.
Yeah.
So, when I see these people in movies, I'm like, oh, look, that's Harrison Ford. No matter what he does, or that's Tom Hanks. No matter what they do, I don't believe that they're characters.
Right.
But with the 70s movie, they had almost like a documentary feel a lot of times.
They were so gritty and ugly looking, just physically ugly looking, that you felt like you found it in the trunk of a car in the woods, and you shouldn't be watching this because this was not meant for anyone to see. Like Last House on the Left, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they all have that ick feeling when you watch them. I Spit on Your Grave. Oh,
They were one
you gotta
step
take a shower
above,
after that.
Yeah, they were one step above what were those? The Faces of Death.
Jeez.
And with any of those, you didn't know what to expect at that point because they were new. Now we know all the twists, but you have to remember in the late 60s, early 70s, anyone walking into I Spit on Your Grave really was not going to be prepared for what they saw.
No. I will say the remake of that is actually very good. There are 3 new I Spit on Your Grave movies, and they're all very good.
Good,
but it's just whenever I bring them up, people are like, I'm not going to watch that.
Well, I've watched them, but when you polish shag carpet, it just doesn't have the same impact.
I totally agree that a lot of these remakes are too glossy. Everybody's too pretty. And like Don said, we know where these things are going, but I like the stories, the way the stories went like when they kidnapped that girl and drop her in Bulgaria. As somebody who was the head of a Bulgarian office at one time, I can absolutely see this happening in Bulgaria. No offense to Bulgarians, but I felt her fear through that whole movie.
How about Suspiria remake?
Oh yeah, that was.
It was good.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm afraid to watch it.
No, you should watch it because it's an interesting exercise in taking something and not trying to do exactly the same thing. In every respect, Argento's whole movie is around color and that sort of the camera angle stuff. In this movie, it's completely urban. Everything's white and gray. I mean, it takes a very different approach to what the film is, which at first, when I'm sitting there watching it, I'm like, this is wrong. This is blasphemy. It's awful. And then I was like, no, actually, this is different. This is a modernized version. And it's not slavishly trying to do what was done before with better lighting, because that wouldn't work. It would just be, why did you bother? So I actually enjoyed it. And they did a little bit of different stuff with the characterization and the ending. So.
All right.
The ending was, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
But the true violence in that movie is the dance sequence.
Yeah.
It's beauty and it's violence rolled into one.
That's kind of hard to watch.
Yeah.
All right. I got to watch it now.
Yeah.
I'll just
Tim's
log off
signing
right
off.
now and go see it.
I think I was like the only person who went to see that in the theater. I think there might have been one other person in the theater the night I saw it.
Were they still there when the movie was over?
Yeah. I had to look behind me now and then to make sure they weren't creeping closer.
It was only out here in the Alamo Theater for, I think, a weekend. That's the only chance. And I was like, oh, I missed it.
I put it on the calendar. I'm like, it ends Thursday. I will be going by Thursday.
So do you guys think, we're seeing a lot of things on TV these days, a lot of series and the equivalent of made-for-TV movies, what, in the 70s we would call a made-for-TV movie. In some ways, do you think we're getting into sort of a golden age of TV?
Yes.
For horror, yeah.
I love horror on TV these days, especially the streaming channels. I mean, it's outdoing what's in the theaters 100%.
Well, there's nothing in the theaters right now.
Well, I mean, I'm talking the last year or two. I mean, you talk about things like anything from Stranger Things to Penny Dreadful to Ash versus the Evil Dead. I mean, there's nothing in the theaters that can compare to what they're doing with these shows, and I love it. This is what occupies more of my time than movies.
And that's why I don't watch the series. I stay away from most of them, and I'm like, why the hell couldn't these things come out when I was in high school and had nothing to do? And I could have just, like stayed up all night and watched these things. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to see the, Fly Manor. And it's like, the days go away and the weeks, and it's like, when am I going to find time to sit down and watch this whole thing? There's all these series, so many that I would love to watch, but I'm just like, I got other stuff I have to do.
I cordon myself off from series because I don't want to make an 18-hour commitment or whatever it is to a single thing. And so my thing is like, I don't know how you've done it, Hunter, because my movie watching has not increased at all in the last 6 months, but I have kept up. And mine is like every Friday and Saturday night, I come down here, I sit down, I pull a movie and I watch it. And that's my thing. It's 4 hours of TV basically every week. So to plug a series into that, I just can't do it. So they all look great, but I'm not going to commit.
Yeah.
Stranger Things is about the only thing I've watched.
No, Mondays through Saturdays, or Mondays through Friday. And then on Sunday, 5-6 days a week, we've got from 8 to 10. And if there's a good horror series on, we are glued to the TV. And you don't have, we don't binge 12 episodes in a day or two. We spread it out over a couple of weeks.
Right. See, I'll watch some of these, like Marianne, that French horror series everyone was talking about. I finally got around to watching it, and I really liked it. And then somebody told me, they Netflix canceled. I was like, oh, thank God. Because as much as I like it, I don't want to have to go through another 8 or something episodes. So and what happens is, like with the movie, it's all right. It's an hour and a half. Bang, I'm done. Like this month, to hit my quota, if I know I have stuff to do early, I'll set my alarm for 4:30 in the morning so I can watch a movie before I'm out the door. Like it's a disease. But with a series, if I watch 2 episodes and then I've lost track for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, I go watch episode 3 and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm watching anymore. Because John, I get like you. I'm like a VHS tape that's a magnet has just gone over my head, and I'm like, who is this? Who's the protagonist? I don't even know who the antagonist is in this movie. So it's hard, but there's great shows. Like I think Channel Zero is probably the best horror television that's been out for years. It was on Sci-Fi Channel, and it was 6-episode arcs, and each series was its own story. Rutger Hauer was in the last one, which is
story kind of, right?
Well, yes, like that concept, but not as annoying.
But that was season story.
Yeah, exactly. So that was brilliant, and I thought Bates Motel, that became must-watch TV. Like where we all watch everything streaming later. That's the only show we've watched in the last maybe 8 years where it was like when it's on, asses in the seat, and you're watching it live. Because I didn't want to take a chance for anyone telling me something the next day. And it was soap opera-y, but Vera Farmiga was amazing.
Someone in the chat says this Channel Zero is still around. R.I.P. Channel Zero. Okay.
It's not. I think it's on Hulu. You can watch all 4 seasons.
Yeah, all the repeats are on there.
Also, Polished Shag Carpet is somebody's new band name. So.
Yeah, that was good. And Paul Hibbert said he's watching Spider Baby tomorrow for Halloween. I put that in my Cemetery Dance column. That's going to be my Halloween movie. So I'm saving it for tomorrow too, Paul. I don't just write it. I live it.
Yeah, see, I'm saving Living Dead Girl. That's my Halloween night watch every year.
The Roland.
Yep.
Now I'm waiting to see the sequel to what was it? My Babysitter or something?
Oh, The Babysitter?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a
I forget
sequel.
the name of it.
It's good. You're gonna like it.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. But that's going to be in about a week or so.
Anything you're
like-
saving, Tim?
What?
Anything you're saving?
No. All these series I'm never going to get to. I'm
If
saving all of
nothing
those.
else, watch Castle Rock.
2 seasons now. How about this? How am I supposed to get through these? I feel like an old guy. Oh, I am old guy. But I feel like a really old guy because I'm explaining to people when I was a kid, TV shows were 30 minutes or an hour, and then they were over. And you could watch them in any damn order you wanted. It didn't matter.
You had TV when you
Why
were a
can't they
kid?
do this for me?
That's true.
You're gonna at some point this winter. You're gonna be snowed in for about a week.
I'm already snowed in for a week.
He'll be writing
Zoom.
5
It
movie
doesn't matter.
tie-in novels when he's just snowed in. That's
My
what
work.
he'll be doing.
My work comes to me like this at this point. I can't escape it. They're not going to snow in my school.
I know after this tonight, I have everyone downstairs waiting because they're like, "Are you going to be finished by 9 o'clock?" Because we're going to watch Trick or Treat, which is
I love that.
we love that movie so much. My daughters have Sam tattooed on them, and then we're watching John Carpenter's Halloween.
There you go.
Good choices.
But now we just got something popping up from Glenn Rolfe, who's another Flame Tree author, saying Nurse Ratched on Netflix was great. And I'm going to have to argue with Glenn.
I didn't see it.
So argumentative.
Because I was so looking forward to that show. And then it was nothing like I expected. Because they completely went in a direction with her, with Ratched herself, that made no sense when you have seen the movie. And I don't want to give a lot of stuff away for people that haven't seen it, but they created a backstory for her that just didn't play into the way she was in the actual movie. And I was really upset because when they've done this with other shows, like with Castle Rock, when they did it with what's her name from Misery, whatever her character's name was, Annie
Wilkes. Yeah,
they gave her a backstory that you could see how that would make her exactly the person that she would be when she had Paul strapped to that bed. With Nurse Ratched, it was like, no, this is a completely different person. And it was basically American Horror Story Part 92.
Well, Glenn just canceled his Netflix
Sorry, Glenn.
subscription. He only watched 2 episodes, he said, so he's out.
Well, I don't mind when they do new versions, though. I mean, it's
wait. He says he's only 2 episodes in, so I'm glad I didn't give anything away.
There you go.
Yeah, no, but you gave away, I think, his desire to finish.
No, he'll finish. Glenn will finish.
But I think it's cool. I mean, I really like over there. I have all my Godzilla figures, and like, how many times have they like redone Godzilla with different origins and different this and different that, and all the comic book heroes that they every few years they kind of redo in another way, and
Which pisses me off too.
Yeah, but see, I like that because it doesn't stop. The other ones are still there. You just have this new way to look at it.
Hey,
So
just look at The Odd Couple. They have like 5 origin stories, how they met.
Yeah, showing that to my family was great. When my daughters are like, "Hey, wait a minute," and I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to my childhood."
Didn't they meet in the army? Weren't they friends when they were kids?
Then they met at college. Yeah.
I just read it. Was listening to an interview about The Odd Couple, getting off horror, but it's the 50th anniversary, and they were saying every year it was going to be canceled, and summer reruns they brought it back, and they didn't think anyone would ever watch these things again. So they said, "Well, who the hell cares? Just write whatever you want to write." So that's why, whatever the writers thought, they're like, "Oh, that's how they met."
Well, it's sort of like with the old Universals, especially with the Mummy movies.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They made absolutely no sense in terms of continuity. They would say, like, in between the movies, 20 years passed. And
Right.
And they would have been taking place in like 1975 by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and one movie ends with him like the mummy buried in like New England, then they dig him up in Louisiana, and you're like, what?
He was tunneling the whole time.
Right.
It's an underground current that carried him down Louisiana.
Is it?
But I guess they figured they were all, they probably thought the audience was full of little kids.
Yeah.
There was no video in those days, so it would be a year before the next movie came out. Nobody would remember.
Yeah, who would care?
There was nobody like us keeping track of every little fact in the movie.
Wasn't it? We were watching.
I've got the limited edition DVD right here.
I think we were watching Son of Frankenstein, and in the very beginning, everyone's hanging out at the sulfur pit because the villagers always have to come and make sure the monster's dead. And then you have this woman talking about her daughter that he murdered, her young daughter, and my wife goes, "She can't be a day under 70." Like her parents are combined age 180 maybe, but they were mourning the loss of their. And then when Frankenstein just tosses her into the sulfur pit. I was like, that's awesome.
I always love the fact in that movie, everyone in town despises the memory of Dr. Frankenstein, maker of monsters. The town is still named Frankenstein.
Right. Right.
Haven't
They
changed the
never
name at
thought of
all.
Changing it, you know?
Maybe we should call ourselves Camp Crystal Lake. And by the way, I don't know how you could possibly work in a lab over a sulfur pit. There was just no way.
I'm just
Smell
wondering
alone is
how
going
many
to kill you.
towns have a sulfur pit.
What did he use
Oh
it
yeah,
for?
we're gonna hang out by the pit and have some beers tonight.
And it had no roof either. So I suppose it never rained.
Great movie, though.
It is a great movie. We overlook those crazy things.
Don, what are you going to watch for Halloween?
Oh, we've been watching. October is always, we watched Fly Manor. What did we see? Oh, we just saw The Face at the Window, the Todd Slaughter movie back in the 30s. Anyone ever see any Todd Slaughter?
I don't think so.
He was like Britain's answer to Karloff or Lugosi.
Mm.
He did a version of Sweeney Todd. These were like early 30s. They were really melodramatic, over the top. He had this maniacal laugh that was his trademark.
Oh, I have to check
Just like
these
that.
out. I'm sure if Mr. Faherty sees him, he'll be like, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like his laugh. I thought it wasn't over the top enough. No.
Yeah, what did we see? I'm trying to think now. We've been watching a couple of movies. I think we have a Paul Naschy film in the queue coming up.
Nice. Werewolf? Vampire?
Yeah, definitely a werewolf.
I was going to say yes. It's usually like all those things crammed together.
Yeah.
Because for us,
Burner?
October is the month where Leah lets me watch the horror films. So this is the month for watching all of them.
After that, it's Jennifer Aniston all the time for Don.
So are there any movies anybody wants to recommend to their loyal readership?
Oh, let me look at my list.
Or not modern.
Let me consult the Holy Book of Antioch.
I'll
I'll just stand up.
I'm going to toss
Oh,
one
good one,
out
Deep
there.
Red.
Yep. Got to do Dario Argento's Deep Red.
Okay.
There's
I'm going to toss one out that people may not have seen, and that's called White Noise. It's from a few years ago
Yes. Is that the EVP movie?
with Michael Keaton.
Yes. That was a good movie.
If you like suspense, that's a movie to watch.
Yeah, I'd recommend one called Terrified that's on Shudder. There,
He's got it.
he's got them all. You look at him back there. Now, I'd
Terrified
recommend
or
one called
Terrifier?
both, but Terrified, the one that's I think it's like a Turkish movie or something. It's
I don't know that.
maybe, yeah, it's really interesting. It's like there's like a neighborhood that has like different hauntings, and it's just the stuff they do is so weird and bizarre. It was one of the very first kind of like supernatural manifestation. I was like, oh God, I don't know if I want to watch any more of this. And not too many movies do that to me. So I thought it was really good.
I mean, oh my God, my brain is on fire right now. The Final Girls, I would tell everybody to watch The Final Girls because it's very meta. So it knows what it is. It's hysterically funny when it needs to be funny. It will make you tear up at one point, and it delivers one of my favorite slasher scenes of all time. Just think barn, person on fire. Just the way that's shot, I get goosebumps every time.
There's no way to describe that movie to people because it is all those things and more. And it has such a deep emotional core for something that also is so goofball at times. Everybody should watch Final Girls. It's an amazing movie.
If you wrote it down on paper, you go, well, this is a hot mess.
Yep.
But when they put it on film, it's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm envious of the folks who made that movie.
So we're probably wrapping up very soon. Any final words anybody wants to toss out there? Any thoughts?
Can we take any questions from the audience?
I don't see the questions, so if
I don't either.
the questions,
I'm just wondering, maybe that'll trigger someone to ask one.
but I'm fine with it.
I will say, have a safe Halloween. So when trick or treaters come, tell them to go out in the middle of the street and just throw candy at them. Hope they catch it.
It may be safe for you. It's not going to be safe for the kids if they're.
Well, what we're doing, I have a high porch, so I have a skeleton, and we're going to put bags of candy in his hands and tie a noose around his neck and lower him down to the kids at the bottom, and they'll take the bags and go on their way. And that way, I won't spill my beer on the children or get cigar ash on them while I'm having fun up top.
That seems like a lot of effort to do.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Look, I have to make this happen for the kids. It's all about the kids, man.
And the beer.
All right. Any other final thoughts? I think we're wrapping up here.
No, this has been a great panel. I wish we could do it more often.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Happy-
you guys are invited on my new podcast with JG Faherty. I don't know what we're going to call it. He said no, maybe.
All right.
Most horror sucks. Call it that.
Do one thumb up, one thumb down for everything.
Thank you all for doing this. It was fun.
All right.
We should do it again. Maybe, when COVID is over, we can actually do it in person, like in a bar and drink.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Properly, yes.
That would be nice. So
I
thank
never
you
said
all.
no to a bar.
Good night, y'all.
Awesome. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Have fun storming the castle.
Watch out for the sulfur pit.
You'll smell it before you get there.
That's true of some movies too.
This is the end of our first annual Flame Tree Creepy Carnival. Thank you all out there in the dark or wherever you are for coming. And we shall see you all next year.